The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the BF&A committee meeting of January 29th, 2021.
Chair, I have reviewed those minutes and I recommend approval of the minutes.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Let the record show it was unanimously approved by the committee. We'll now move to the first item on the agenda, and I assume somebody's going to put something up on the screen. First item.
Impact through the first quarter of the fiscal year. At the time the FY21 budget was developed, we reduced the property income in attempts to project the impact of COVID-19 on rent collections. This impact hits our books as additional bad debt. The bad debt expense in the Opportunity Housing portfolio was just under $2 million, a 71% increase, or $833,000 since first quarter. This increase being partially offset by savings in other expense categories, largely maintenance, as well as the deferral of county loan payments.
Tommy, can you tell us which chart or graph you're referring to as you go through?
Okay, I will. At this moment, I'm just summarizing some points, but I will reference each page as we go through.
Okay, great, thank you.
As the pandemic continues to impact property performance, we have reforecasted the impact and will be presenting a budget amendment later today. Now, we'll take a look at page 9. We'll see that the agency ended the quarter with a net cash surplus. That's good, right there. With a net cash surplus of $2,110,749. This surplus resulted in a second quarter budget to actual positive variance of $1,049,813 when compared to the anticipated second quarter net cash flow surplus of $1,060,936. The primary causes were higher cash flow in some of the unrestricted Opportunity Housing properties as a result of property performance. If we move on to page 15, we'll take a look at the general fund. Thank you. The general fund ended the quarter with a deficit of $2,723,255, which resulted in a positive variance of $1,383 when compared to the projected deficit of $2,724,638. Income in the general fund was $1.6 million less than budget due to delayed fee income and lower draws on the Opportunity Housing Reserve Fund. Expenses in the general fund were $1.6 million lower than budget, primarily as a result of lapse in salaries and benefits, coupled with savings in professional services, computer software, utility, tenant services expense, partially offset by overages and maintenance. A portion of these savings is a result of timing issues, and staff does not anticipate the full savings to be realized at year end. On this same page, we'll take a look at the bond funds. The positive expense variance in the multifamily bond fund is a result of small savings in most administrative accounts. The single-family bond fund experienced negative expenses as a negative expense variances in administrative accounts. Apologize. Moving on to the Opportunity Housing Fund on page 16, we will begin by looking at the Development Corporation properties. This chart is broken into two parts, unrestricted and restricted properties. The properties with unrestricted net cash flow generated cash flow of $3.3 million, which is $293,000 lower than projected. In our review, we determined that this variance is often largely attributable to items such as higher bad debt and maintenance. This is true with the Barclay, MPDU 2, Scattered Site 2, and VPC 2. Income in several of our properties is showing a positive income variance that may be offset by additional bad debt. Looking at the properties with restricted net cash flow, this group ended the quarter with a $42,000 higher cash flow than budgeted as a result of higher tenant income. The positive cash flow variance was primarily resulting from the Oaks having higher tenant income and savings in maintenance costs offset by higher bad debt and utilities. The RAD 6 properties experienced a negative cash flow variance of $38,006 collectively as a result of overages in various expense categories offset by higher tenant income. Moving on to page 17, we'll take a look at the opportunity housing properties.
Is there any way you can enlarge this on the screen?
Sure, Nico, can you assist with that, please?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So the first group, properties with unrestricted net cash flow, generated approximately $1.5 million, which is $1.3 million more than projected. This variance is often largely attributable to higher tenant income and savings in maintenance and the deferred loan payments, partially offset by bad debt. The second group, properties with restricted cash flow, cash flow for this group was $134,171 lower than budget. When looking at the variances are often attributable to higher tenant income offset by savings in various expense categories. I'll take a moment to address any questions you may have regarding these properties at this time. Yes.
Tommy, you mentioned deferred loan payments. Can you tell me what loans we're deferring payments on and why?
I can step in for a second. It's our county debt, and we did receive a deferment letter from them for the loans that we have on the properties, and they've actually extended it to June 30th, 21. It's just the county debt.
Question related to the defer, are they deferred? What are the terms of the deferral?
So the terms are, it's deferred until June 30th. And if we can demonstrate that we had a loss in income as a result of COVID-19 and an increase in expenses, then the deferment it'll basically get added to the end of the loan. So we won't have to pay it for this year. It'll get tacked on.
That was my question. So that we have to just show that we
have to justify it. Yeah.
And then it just tack on at the end. Okay, that's good. I was wondering about that actually yesterday. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tony.
No problem. Thank you. So if we move on to page 18, we will take a look at the public fund. So beginning with public housing, as you can see, there's a small amount of expenses totaling $6,552 for continued expenses at Emory Grove. Moving on to the voucher program, overall, there was a shortfall of approximately $878,000. The HAP shortfall was funded by HCVP reserves. There's a positive variance for HAP admin of $680,000 when compared to the projected surplus of $17,000. A result of higher fee income and positive variances in the admin expense. The higher administrative fee income was a result of a higher proration factor and higher administrative fees received on incoming portables.
Tell me,
yes,
question, I'm sort of struggling with if HAP payments were higher, 4.6 million higher, why doesn't the HAP revenue keep up with the payments?
do you want me to respond, Tommy, or?
Sure, thanks.
So what we got more in revenue over other periods, and so sometimes what HUD will do will hold back some of the money coming in to us until we spend some of what we got basically front loaded to us. So for a while we were underspending a little bit, and we were sitting on some cash surplus, and so they stopped holding back, and we've recognized the revenue already from when they sent it to us earlier. So it's kind of a little bit of a mismatch between the revenue and the expenses, but we're sitting on basically unrestricted assets or net assets, and we will spend them by them giving us less revenue so that it evens out.
Okay, so when we recognized it before, we didn't put it aside, or I'm just.
No, the HUD has a requirement that we recognize it all as revenue when we receive it. And then if we're underspending, it becomes basically net assets, retained earnings. And then if we start they'll start to hold back, and then we'll spend more, and then it'll even out.
And if it crosses over budget years, how do you reconcile that? That's I guess where I'm.
So when you say, we would basically have either a positive net asset or a lower net asset balance. Is that your question? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, no.
He's saying if in fact it crosses over the budget year. So if they gave us more at a time where we now had a new budget, for example, how do we track and manage that? And because we have HUD sort of guiding this in the most difficult, arcane fashion possible. Really poorly is the answer, because we often have to fight with them about reconciliation of, and it's not just HOC, it's virtually all voucher programs. Have to have discussions with them about reconciliation of it. And so they believe it's one number, they give us that reconciliation. We then have to go back and forth quite a number of times and evidence that, in fact, we believe it's X or Y. And so.
Yeah, and so they basically reduced our funding because we had been spending less, and it's more of a timing reduction. In other words, they hold back some of the cash that they're sending us and some of the money that they're sending us until we catch up and spend what they've given us already.
No, I guess I understand that, and I've sort of followed that. I guess the real question, and Stacy, you were getting to it, if in a given calendar year or fiscal year, we underspend, therefore have more income because they gave us more revenue, does that not just throw off our financial position by overstating our assets?
So it basically what it does is it increases our net assets, our retained earnings, for lack of a better word. But as we would then spend more and receive less in income, it would reduce our net asset balance.
Okay.
In the following fiscal year. So it's I don't want to say a timing difference, but it is somewhat of a timing difference in how we receive and spend.
Okay. Go
So,
ahead, Tommy.
thank
Sorry.
you. Let me see. So on that same point, HUD did provide additional administrative fees in July and September of 2020 as a result of reconciliation of fees earned based on actual utilization. Moving on to the last page, it's the capital budget on page 20. A few properties exceeded the annual capital budget because of unplanned capital work. Not all the properties have sufficient replacement reserves at the property to cover the overages through December. However, staff is reviewing to see if funding can be covered by other sources. These properties include the CDBG units, Georgian Court, Holiday Park, Jubilee, Hermitage, McKendree, Scatter Site 1, VPC 2, and Washington Square.
What was the big problem with Georgian Court?
Georgian Court, I believe there was a window replacement project that caused them to be over.
Commissioner Nelson, they have residual receipts at the property, and the window replacement was identified as a project to be funded with the residual receipts, but it was after the budget was adopted, so the capital budget had not been increased to include the windows, but there are residual receipts to cover that window replacement at the property.
Okay. Thank you.
That is all I have for today. Thank you all.
Thank you. And now we'll get the FY21 second quarter unaudited financial statement.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson, and Francisco Vega is going to walk us through that.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
The net position increased by 9.3 million from fiscal year ending 6/30/2020 for a total of 215 million to 224 million this year as a result of the 14.9 million capital contributions from Bauer Park Apartments closings, partially offset by a net loss of 5.6 million for the first half of FY21. Additionally, the liquidity ratios decreased due to an increase in current mortgage liabilities due to a 100 million draw from the PNC recycling facilities in connection with the West Side Shady Grove closing. The PNC recycling facility was retired on January 28th, 2021, using the proceeds from the MHDB Series 2021 A bonds. The current liabilities within the multifamily bond fund also increased due to bond proceeds not yet drawn for Bauer Park. In December, the current ratio was 2.28 as compared with 3.94 in June of 2020. The quick ratio was 2.12 in December compared to 3.55 in June 2020.
And what do we think in terms of that going back up, or is it going to stay down? Are they going to?
Without the 100 million, it's pretty much neck and neck with where it was last quarter. The 100 million will probably be with us a little bit through the duration of the construction, but again, it's without the 100 million, it's pretty much the same numbers as we had the previous quarter.
And if I'm remembering correctly, the question I've asked for umpteen years is where should we be? And it's somewhere short of 2.0, right? Is it like 175, 195, something like that?
Yeah, I think even at 2.2 and 2. We're still in good shape.
Yeah, no, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case,
Yeah.
but it's always nice to even have it higher.
And in theory, we kind of are if you back out the 100 million. So that's the good news.
Okay. Thank you.
When you say, Cornelia, during the construction, during which construction?
Of West Side Shady Grove.
Okay.
Okay, I'll continue, commissioners. The total assets, excluding the deferred outflows of resources, increased by 133.8 million, or 8.81% from 1.5 billion in June of 2020 to 1.7 billion in December of 2020. The increase in total assets was largely due to the following. The increase in restricted cash and cash equivalents is primarily due to the 100 million loan proceeds from the PNC recycling credit facility for the West Side Shady Grove transaction and the issuance of 2020 Series A bonds related to Bauer Park Apartments acquisition within the multifamily bond fund. Additionally, the increase in mortgage and construction loans receivable is driven by a tax-exempt mortgage loan, seller note, and seller sponsor loan to Bauer Park Apartments LP in connection with the acquisition, renovations, and lease up of Bauer Park Apartments. This increase is partially offset by the repayment of the 900 Thayer LP draws from PNC Bank Real Estate Line of Credit, the RELOC, using the Federal Financing Bank loan proceeds and the LIHTC investor equity. The increase in the restricted cash and cash equivalents is due to the receipt of the settlement proceeds from Bauer Park Apartments and 900 Thayer. The single family bond fund and the multifamily bond fund likewise remitted a portion of the FY21 operating budget contribution to the general fund. The increase in total assets is partially offset by a decrease in restricted long-term investments are due to the single family bond fund driven by scheduled payments and 36 mortgage-backed securities closings, MBS. The multifamily bond fund also contributed a small amount to the decrease. And a decrease in capital assets is mainly due to normal depreciation of assets. Let's see where we are. Moving along down to page
Before
24.
you get to that, can I ask one
Sure.
other question? Sorry, just to keep straight on my terms. The PNC Recycling Credit Facility. What's that?
What is it?
I mean, the PNC Recycling Credit Facility, the $100 million loan
Oh.
from the PNC Recycling Credit Facility. That's a term that I'm not.
That's
So-
not, go ahead, Karen. Yeah, go ahead.
So you may recall we recycled multifamily volume cap from CDA and for 900 Thayer to finance the Shady Grove transaction. So we borrowed $100 million from PNC to redeem the bonds that were outstanding at CDA and for 900 Thayer. And then we refunded the bonds in January of this year to create the mortgage for the Shady Grove transaction. So we used the PNC facility to provide funds to CDA to retire the bonds in 2020 and for the 900 Thayer bonds in 2020. And then we refunded those bonds and with the bond issuance this year and created the new mortgage for the Shady Grove transaction in January of this year. So the recycled facility used the $100 million loan from PNC.
So it's really a mortgage on.
Pardon?
It's really a mortgage on West Side Shady Grove.
Right. So it's the PNC provided the funds to allow us to recycle the volume
Okay.
cap that we used to finance the Shady Grove transactions.
Okay.
But it had to be done in multiple steps to effect the recycling of the volume cap.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
If we can scroll to page 24 of 66. The overall agency net income increased by 22.7 million when compared to prior year, same period. However, after isolating and adjusting for certain line items, adjusted net loss is 3.9 million. These line items include transfer of equity of former tax credit properties, capital contributions, and unrealized gain and loss on investments. The overall decrease of 3.6 million is driven by the following: an increase in HAP expense, a decrease in investment income, and a decrease in other federal, state, and county grants. This is all partially offset by a decrease in administration expense, a decrease in maintenance expense, and lastly, an increase in HAP revenue. Any additional questions, commissioners?
I have a question about our decrease in investment income. Can you tell me what's driving that?
Interest rate?
Mhm,
Interest rate?
primarily.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the balance of the investments is down too or not. We'd have to check, Francisco, but it probably is interest rate as well.
Primary interest rates.
Single family side.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 21 second quarter budget amendment. And Terry Fowler is going to walk us through that.
Thank you, Cornelia. Good morning, Commissioners. Staff prepared a reforecast for FY21 and informally presented it at the January 29th BF&A meeting. The second quarter budget amendment before you today includes this reforecast, as well as the reduction in county funding resulting from the county's FY21 savings plan. On page 40, you will see that the general fund has changed in the budget amendment. Income is up approximately $399,000. The increase is due to increased commitment and development fees based on a revised schedule for the development projects, and 40% of that is in the general fund.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Absolutely.
I think Commissioner Priest had asked if that page could be expanded. Would you?
Sure. Nico, could you increase the size of the page, please?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the net income increase of $399,000, as I said, is due to increased commitment and development fees that have been offset by a reduction of development corporation fees in the general fund, which is the mechanism used to take unrestricted cash from the development corporation properties. If we move to page 41, under Opportunity Housing, you will see that income is up $3.6 million. This is due to the shift of the originally budgeted COVID impact from income to bad debt of $2.87 million. We also have an increased draw of cash on properties that have lower income due to COVID of approximately $818,000. And we have a decreased draw from the general fund operating reserve for Metro Point of approximately $72,000 based on the amendment for the COVID impact at that property. Our expenses are up just over $4 million. The primary impact on this is the shift of the original COVID impact of $2.87 million, plus an additional COVID impact on bad debt of approximately $2.7 million. These increases in expenses are offset by decreases that are the result of how cash flow is distributed from the properties. I mentioned in the general fund that the development corporation fees are down $1.1 million. On restricted properties, cash flow is down approximately $333,000. And on the foreclosure properties, the money available for operating reserve contributions is down approximately $29,000. Also on page 41, you will see that the change in fee income, commitment and development fee income, has also increased income in the OHRF, and that is the 60% of those fees, increasing the income approximately $1.1 million, and that will be restricted to the OHRF. The bottom of the page, we start talking about the public fund, and you can see that the county income is down $205,000 for the savings plan that was implemented for FY21. We shifted costs of our housing resources staff that support the voucher program at the customer services centers from the county grant, and we are moving that cost into the voucher program. We received additional admin fees for COVID-related expenses, and because the reduction in the county grant was related to the anticipation of impacts from COVID, We are using the additional admin fees to cover the cost of staff that was shifted to the voucher program. The net effect of the FY21 second quarter budget amendment is a shortfall of approximately $819,000. The current FY21 budget includes a projected draw of $228,791 from the general fund operating reserve to balance the budget. Staff recommends that this anticipated draw be increased by $818,652 to a total of $1,047,443 in order to maintain a balanced budget. The changes are reflected on the chart on page 43, and I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Does anyone have a question? If there are no questions, do I have a motion to support the staff recommendation to the commission for approval of the budget amendment?
I move that we support staff's recommendation to the commission to approve the budget amendment.
Second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Then it's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Just one comment. This is just a general comment, Cornelia. It's really interesting to see the significant impact that COVID has had on just our fiscal positioning within the agency. You know, we're just one agency, and you look across the landscape of America where you've got 3,200 housing authorities, many of them who are not as well capitalized as we are. You know, I can imagine they must be having some really significant issues trying to deal with adjusting to these COVID increases, especially when they are not getting some offsets like the county being willing to, you know, to roll back the payment on fees or things like that. I can imagine it's pretty dramatic.
Agreed. No, agreed.
But it's also, I agree with you, Roy, but I also think that this is another opportunity for us to recognize the work of our staff and one, analyzing and fully appreciating what all these impacts are and coming up with a plan to address those so that we continue on the strong financial path that we have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, just an observation. Thank
Okay.
you.
And now we'll have write-offs.
Right. And so next item is the uncollectible tenant account receivable, and Nilu Rizigi is going to walk us through that.
Good morning, Commissioners. The agency's current policy is to provide for an allowance for bad debt on tenants receivable which have been outstanding for over 90 days. On a quarterly basis, the staff also recommends to the Commission the write-off uncollected receivable from past tenants. The proposed write-off for the second quarter of fiscal year 2021 amounted to $50,000, a decrease of $30,000 compared to the previous quarter. This period's write-off consists of $46,000 of bad debt from the Opportunity Housing properties, which were largely attributable to EPC2 Corp. And State Rental Partnership, $640 from Supportive Housing Program, $3,000 from the RAD properties. The primary reason for the write-offs across the property include tenants who skipped, voluntarily left their units, passed away, left to job transfer, transferred within program, purchased a home, ported out of Montgomery County, and no longer qualifies for the unit. After the full Commission's approval, the write-off will be processed through Yardi with the tenant detail placed in the debt database. The next anticipated write-off will be for the third quarter of fiscal year 21, which will cover January 1st to March 30th, 2021. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
It appears the amount of bad debt write-off for this quarter is less than what we had the previous quarter, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a good direction.
Well, but let's not, you know,
Yeah.
Let's not kick up our heels quite yet, because what you're not seeing, we're not seeing at all the COVID impact, the COVID-19 impact on write-offs across the portfolio. And just as a reminder, you all are well aware of this. We are obviously in an eviction moratorium, and as a consequence, we're seeing, and it's a broad statewide, nationwide eviction moratorium. And so the sort of folks have talked about the eviction cliff, and folks have talked about the tsunami of write-offs as a consequence of the impact of COVID-19. Again, this is where it's incredibly important for local, state, and federal rent assistance to be coming directly to particularly affordable housing landlords, but landlords in general, in order to avert some of these challenges. But it's coming. We're managing it in the meantime.
Yeah, and just to piggyback with what Stacy said, I mean, again, these write-offs are for people who are no longer in our units. So
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next item.
sure. So
Me-
next item, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Next item is the beginning of a series of property management contracts. And
Wait a minute, Rick, do we need to vote on this?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was wondering.
I forgot. I thought, well, do I have
It's
a
okay.
motion for approval of the staff, or join the staff in recommending the write-off to the full commission?
I move that we approve the staff's recommendation related to tenant accounts write-offs.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then it will be a unanimous vote. So we'll now move on to the next, which begins a series of third-party property management contract renewals. And I have general question or statement or suggestion. First question is, do you know offhand how many third-party management contracts we have? Roughly.
I do not know the precise number, Commissioner. I mean, we have them by property or by property grouping.
The one, my assumption is, and I know this to be true, we have a slew of them. We have a large number of property management contracts.
Yes, indeed.
And in each case, we have generally approved a contract after an RFP for 1 year with the possibility of 2 years renewal.
Right.
And for various reasons, the staff has to come back to the commission every year for approval of the renewals, which I think is probably an administrative step that in my view, at this point, is not necessary. I think our history of our third-party management contracts, and again, you guys can tell me whether or not I'm close to correct, is that in most all cases, the staff has in fact come back and recommended renewals for the remaining couple of years. I'm not aware of more than one or two where we might have changed managers during that 3-year period. But the fact is, all of our contracts are written so that we can, at any point, terminate the contract. All of that is to say, one, I think we should re-examine our policy in terms of approval of these. If in fact we've got the ability to terminate at will during the period, then I would be willing to consider, and I think we ought to think about approval of 3-year contracts rather than 1 year with 2-year renewals. Or if we do the renewals, then let them be approved by the executive director without having to return to the commission for approval. Because this, I mean, it just, it's more than we need to go through. I think we need to continue to receive reports on the management performance, the occupancy of those managers. But that is different than having to go through this process of contract approval. That's one point. The second one is, and I'm not sure, in terms of the development corps, when we approve as the general partner a management contract, third-party management contract, we send it to the development corp for approval. Do they approve it, and do they require coming back to the development corp for approval of the renewals? Or is the fact that they've approved this thing, which says that the commission can in fact renew it, suffice?
So I think we have been bringing it back to the development corps as well.
No, but he's asking if we actually have to. I think we're doing it as practice, Commissioner, more than a requirement, but we need to check. We need to check.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and again, it gets back to trying to manage both for the staff and for the commission some of these sort of pro forma steps. If in fact the development corp has engaged HOC as the general partner, or if we are the general partner and we have been vested with responsibilities to manage the properties, then there's nothing untoward about the development corp board recognizing that those property management decisions by the commission, be they approved by the director or by the commission itself, should be sufficient, and we shouldn't have to go through the process, which we will evidently have to go through in March, of having to convene 10 different development corp meetings to approve a renewal.
Point taken. First off, I think we're appreciative of your thought to how much of a challenge it is for staff administratively to get this done, and I guess also what a poor use of you all's bandwidth is as well. What I can commit to you is that we'll get back to you with proposed changes to procurement policy that would also potentially dovetail with proposed changes in how the dev corps operate with regard to renewals. I don't know exactly the answers at this moment, but it'll take us a little bit of time. And but I appreciate the consideration, and you can look forward to some proposed modifications.
Okay, and I guess the last comment would be that as I recall in my history, part of the reason for this is that the commission wanted to continue to stay on top of the performance of our third-party managers. And I think that in fact, over the years, and this has been going on for quite a while, it's been proven that the staff, one, come back and report to us on the performance in different pieces, whether it's in the budget performance. Usually at budget approval time, we go through each of the dev corps and talk in some detail about their performance. But even during the course of the year, we do that. So that the necessity that the commission saw years ago for this policy no longer exists. Anyway,
let me say on Oh, go ahead, Fran.
No.
You had a comment.
That's okay. I was just going to follow up, but if you want to go first, I'm happy to wait.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I had a less maybe universal approach to thinking about this. I saw this and I said, could we have one motion that covers all of the renewals and just have a chart? And I didn't know whether having different vendors would prevent us approving all of the extensions in one motion. But maybe what we need is either a 1 or 2 year initial period, depending on how long it takes you to figure out whether this vendor is actually performing with the property or not. And then more like a pipeline report that we have that shows these kinds of charts with the performance on occupancy levels, reacts, et cetera, that we would get on a quarterly basis. And if we don't have to approve all of the specific options that are being exercised, given that we approved an initial contract that has those options. So I agree with Rick that there's no doubt a way to simplify. I would like to see reporting about the occupancy REAC and the performance aspects of these vendors, because that is part of our oversight commission.
Absolutely.
I was just going to make a couple of points. One, that I would certainly maintain the idea of having annual contracts with 2-year renewals, if no more than the fact of having the vendor aware that they are not already locked into a 3-year contract. I mean, I just think it's important that we have the annual review by the staff of the performance of these vendors, and that they know that. I think people prepare differently when they know that they have to annually, demonstrate that they've got the capacity to carry out the purposes and scope of the work under the contract. So I think that's important to do. I also think, anything we can do to streamline this process administratively would be certainly warranted, because as we're going to go through these, and which emphasize the point that Commissioner Nelson is making, that every one of them is going to be basically redundant in terms of the language that's presented. And the only difference is really the property. And I think from a procurement standpoint, just for you, Mr. Spann, it's only a matter of, is there anything in the procurement law that, or in the procurement itself, that requires something? But that's mostly administrative. I mean, as long as you carried out the procurement, which is the actual announcement and awarding of a contract, is what the procurement requirement is. The reporting of it is not necessarily, that's an administrative decision.
Right.
And I think that you can certainly we'd be comfortable with, as both commissioners outlined, with a reporting mechanism that keeps us abreast of what's going on in terms of our property management environment.
Okay. All right, Stacy, you can go back and digest all those comments and decide what it is that you would like to recommend.
Now, can I ask one question about one specific one of these?
Sure, but we're going to have to, well, Asha?
Yes.
Is it possible, since we're not actually approving these, can we go through all of them and have one motion to recommend each one go to the commission?
Yeah, I mean, you can combine multiple items into a single motion as long as it's clear.
Okay. So I think, Fran, your point was well taken. So what we will do is go through these, and if there are questions on any individual one, fine. If not, at the end, then I'd entertain a motion that we recommend forwarding all of these requests to the full commission rather than having to do each one individually. Good suggestion, Commissioner Kelleher. But now you have a question about one. Is it on Forest Oak?
No, actually. So you
Okay.
can ask that question. You obviously have late.
No, I don't have a question for it. I just thought, just for the sake of order, that we might just.
Sure. You can go through them all.
If there's anything, this would be also an opportunity, and I'm not trying to just wipe them all off. Opportunity for staff to, which you've already done in terms of giving us a memo, but if you have some points you want to make related to a particular property, this is an opportunity to do so. So why don't we just start with Forest Oak? Jay?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Jay Berkowitz, Asset Manager for Property Management. The property management contract with Forest Oaks is expiring on June 30th, 2021, and it provides for 2 one-year renewals. Staff requests that the contract for Forest Oaks be renewed for 1 year with Habitat America. Forest Oaks is a high-rise senior community of 175 HUD and tax credit units. The property was built in 1981 and is located in Gaithersburg. The property is located a short distance away from the Lake Forest Shopping Mall and the Montgomery County's Fairgrounds. The property received a score of 99A for its most recent REACT inspection and has maintained an average occupancy of 99% over the last 2 years. The renewal of the property management contract for Forest Oaks for 1 year will not have a budget impact as the costs associated with the services were factored into the calendar year 2021 property budget. Additionally, the renewal will be performance-based, so the management fee would be lower if revenue declined below budgeted expectations. In addition to occupancy, performance criteria will include REACT scoring. Are there any questions?
No questions on Forest Oak. Let's move on to Diamond Square.
Yes, for the record, Jay Berkowitz, Asset Manager for Property Management. The property management contract with Diamond Square Limited Partnership is expiring June 30th, 2021, and the contract provides for 2 one-year renewals. Staff requests that the contract for property management services for Diamond Square be renewed for 1 year with Residential One Management. Diamond Square is a 124-unit high-rise community consisting of 43 market and 81 units at or below 50% AMI located in Gaithersburg. Diamond Square was constructed in 1985 as a mid-rise hotel and was converted to apartments in 1991. The property has maintained an average occupancy of 99% over the last 2 years. The renewal of the property management contract for Diamond Square for 1 year will not have a budget impact as the costs associated with the services were factored into the fiscal year 2021 property budget. Additionally, the renewal will be performance-based, so the management fee would be lower if revenue declined below budgeted expectations. In addition to occupancy, performance criteria will include REACT scoring. Does anyone have any questions?
Nope.
Hearing no questions, we'll move to the next group, which includes Alexander House, Georgian Court, Stewart Townhomes, Glenmont Crossing, Glenmont Westerly, and Brookside Glen. And I guess Millicent?
Yes. Hello, my name is Millicent Anglin, and I'm an asset manager in the property management department. I'm recommending that the property management contracts for Alexander House, Georgian Court, Stewart Townhomes, Glenmont Crossing, Glenmont Westerly, and Brookside Glen be renewed for 1 year through June 30th, 2022. The contracts with Edgewood Management expire on June 30th, 2021. The properties are well maintained and have satisfactory occupancy. Average occupancy is 95% for these 6 properties, and the range is 92 to 99%. In a March 2020 resident survey, Edgewood scored 3 out of 4 available points, which was the 4th highest score of the 6 management companies surveyed. Edgewood has recently reorganized their corporate level staffing to improve customer service, and HOC staff continues working closely with Edgewood to ensure improved resident survey results going forward. Staff requests that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee join its recommendation to the Commission and respective development corporations to renew the property management contracts with Edgewood through June 30th, 2022. The renewals will be performance-based, so fees will be lower if revenue declines below budgeted expectations or if the property scored below 80 on a REAC inspection. Do you have any questions?
I have a comment. I would just like to say the chart here is the kind of thing I have in mind as a equivalent of the pipeline chart. It gives a bunch of properties. It shows their location, the number of units, percent occupancy, REAC score. And you might want to put, you know, original date of contract or something on there to give us a sense of where they are in their terms. But that's what I had in mind.
Okay, thank you. The chart on the next page shows the original date of the contract. That's the
Right. Yeah, just add that, and then I guess the vendor, because you'll have multiple vendors on it. Those two columns added to the first chart would give me everything I'm interested in.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions?
Yeah, in terms of taking up Commissioner Kelleher's suggestion, I just caution not to make any chart you do too busy, so it loses its effectiveness. Yeah, the question I have is Brookside Glen and their REAC score. What do we know about that?
That was due to dry rot, and those repairs were made shortly after the REAC was completed.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this group? Then we'll go to the next group, which is Wheaton Metro Point.
Yes. For the record, my name is Millicent England, and I'm an asset manager in the property management department. I'm recommending that the property management contracts for Metro Point Apartments be renewed for 1 year through June 30th, 2022. The current contract with Pizuto Management expire on June 30th, 2021. Metro Point Apartments is a 103-unit multifamily property that includes 53 affordable units for households earning up to 50% AMI. The property is located in Wheaton and offers amenities including a community room, business center, fitness room, and garage parking. Property is well maintained and received a 98A on its most recent REAC inspection. Occupancy is 95% and has averaged 94% over the past 2 years. In HOC's March 2020 resident survey, Pizuto scored 3.45 out of 4 available points, which was the second highest score of the 6 management companies surveyed. Staff requests that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee join its recommendation to the Commission and the Wheaton Metro Development Corporation to renew the property management contracts with Pizuto through June 30th, 2022. The renewal will be performance-based, so fees will be lower if revenue declines below budgeted expectations or if the property scores below 80 on a REAC inspection. Do you have any questions?
No. The well, it is a question, I guess. Do you know, and this is just for informational purposes, what our experience is currently with the garage at Metro Point in terms of how many spaces are rented? I mean, it's something that we face every time we do a development near a metro. So we need to begin collecting data related to the use so that we can properly size parking.
No, I don't know what the utilization of the occupancy at Metro Point is.
We can find out. We'll find out.
Okay. Thank you. So if there are no further questions on that, then we'll go to Green Hills and Westwood Tower.
Yes. Again, for the record, my name is Millicent England, and I'm an asset manager in the property management department. I'm recommending that the property management contracts for Green Hills Apartments and Westwood Tower be renewed for 1 year through June 30th, 2022. The current contracts with CapREIT Residential Management expire on June 30th, 2021. Green Hills is a 77-unit multifamily property that includes 55 affordable units for households earning up to 60% AMI. Westwood Tower is a 202-unit multifamily property That includes 58 affordable units for households earning up to 80% AMI. Green Hills occupancy is 96% and has been stable since the renovation was completed in 2019. Westwood's current occupancy is 89%, which is below the 2-year average of 95%. Occupancy has declined due to COVID-19, and management has increased marketing efforts to fill vacant units. In HOC's March 2020 resident survey, CAPREIT scored 3.56 out of 4 available points, which was the highest score of the 6 management companies surveyed. Staff requests that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee join its recommendation to the Commission to renew the property management contracts with CAPREIT through June 30th, 2022. The renewals will be performance-based, so fees will be lower if revenue declines below budgeted expectation, or if the property scored below 80 on a REAC inspection. Do you have any questions?
This is where my question is. On the property whose occupancy is 89% and it's attributed to COVID, that's the only one out of this fairly substantial group of properties where that's apparently an issue. That makes me question whether in fact it's COVID, because COVID, I would think, would be affecting more of the properties. Is there anything else there, and how effective do you believe these new efforts are going to be?
Yes.
So I it's not the only one that's impacted by COVID. It's just the only one in this larger cohort where we explicitly point out that that we attribute some of the rationale to the impact of COVID. Westwood is these are largely market opportunities, and so it certainly is plausible that folks have decided to move elsewhere in an effort to get larger space or purchase a home in order to wait out COVID, if you will, particularly since people are working remotely. In terms of the impact of these, these sort of these efforts, honestly, I don't know. And I don't want to actually overpromise. And the reason I don't want to is because there are a number of properties that, quite frankly, are just coming to market who will also be looking for tenants and competing with us. And so that my guess is, quite frankly, that's going to create a level of competition that we've not seen, and that folks will get into pricing wars, and if not pricing wars, then there'll be all sorts of concessions. Not something that we've typically had to offer a great deal of at this particular property. So I think we've got to sort of wait and see. But what I will pledge to you, and we've done this before, if there is a consistent problem around loss of occupancy, then we always have the out clause in our contract. We can make them aware of that. Millicent's been very good at sort of mining the relationships and minding the asset overall. So we expect to have a good advance notice in place in the event that we do need to switch property managers.
Okay, my second question then is, this property, I believe we were trying to increase the percentage of affordable within the property. Is this an opportunity to do that?
There's always an opportunity to try to do it. We still want to find that even at affordable levels, we still want to find the best tenants we can. I think that's an ongoing effort. Millicent, you can certainly weigh in here.
Yes, I was going to mention that we have increased the affordability at the property. It was 43 units about a year and a half ago, and we increased it to 58 units.
And what percent is that?
So let me do the math, 1 second.
Below 30.
It used to be 20% affordable and now it is 27%.
Okay, we're getting close to 30.
Good.
Seems like we still have a bit of space to grow the affordable then.
Very possible, yes.
Okay, great.
Good. Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
I have a question on Green Hills. If memory serves me correctly, there were questions when we acquired Green Hills about its accessibility for our clients. Because it's not on the well-traveled path, if I recall correctly. But you've got 96% occupancy. Is that correct? And
yes,
am I correct in assuming that it is not as accessible as a lot of our properties, or as we think we need to have our properties? And the reason I ask it is because it always comes up when we get into some of these areas about whether or not they are accessible.
Yeah,
And this is an example of a property, to my pleasant surprise, where the occupancy is good.
So the occupancy is good, and you'll recall, commissioners, that we did a pretty extensive rehab. And so there are two things. One, these are good size units. We leased down, and so we had to lease back up. And so, yeah, I mean, this bolsters the case that in this particular sector, there are not significant numbers of high quality rental opportunities. And, you know, I have to, until we get to a point where we're, you know, where we see unit delivery in this sector of the county significantly higher, I don't think the rental market itself is saturated.
Okay.
So.
Good. All right. Well, it was just an observation. Good. No questions. Then let's go to Cider Mill.
For the record, my name is Millicent Anglin, and I'm an asset manager in the property management department. I'm recommending that the property management contract for Cider Mill Apartments be renewed for 1 year to June 30th, 2022. The current contract with Grady Management expires on June 30th, 2021. Cider Mill is an 864-unit multifamily property that includes 345 affordable units for households earning up to 60% AMI. Amenities include a playground, on-site services, office, swimming pool, and parking. Current occupancy is 94%, which is above the 2-year average of 91%. Grady Management scored 2.69 of 4 available points in HOC's resident survey completed in March 2020. Grady is committed to improving customer service and is facilitating monthly virtual tenant meetings to improve resident communication. The last meeting was last night. Staff requests that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee join its recommendation to the Commission to renew the property management contract with Grady Management through June 30th, 2022. The renewal will be performance-based, so fees will be lower if revenue declines below budgeted expectations or if the property scores below 80 on a REAC inspection. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay. Then do I have a motion for the committee endorsing the staff recommendation for all of these renewals to go forward to the commission?
So moved.
So moved. I think it would. I think it would be proper in the motion that we make that we identify the properties: Forest Oak Towers, Diamond Square, Alexander House Apartments, Georgian Court, Stewarttown, Glenmont Crossing, Glenmont Westerly, Brookside, Glen, Metro Point, Green Hills, and Westwood, and Cedar Mill Apartments, and the respective property management companies.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a unanimous vote. Stacy, in terms of the commission meeting, I think the way that we discussed this with the committee was good, going through all of them, we could actually group them all and have a single resolution at the commission, similar to what Commissioner Priest has just talked about, rather than having individual ones, couldn't we?
Right, have the resolution and behind that the individual write-ups. That's fine. I think we're
No, wait, say that again.
So we have the resolution that includes all of the property management contracts, and then these memoranda would of course be included in the packet as well.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yeah, so that we don't have to go through 10, 12 separate approvals. Okay.
We're appreciative.
Another comment I'd like to make, I would certainly like to acknowledge the work the staff has done to essentially present these to us for approval prior to the expiration date. If there's been any one common discussion has been, why are you bringing this to us just the day before they renew? So I wanted to acknowledge that staff has done an excellent job in this group of properties and bring them to us prior to the expiration date of the current contract.
Mhm. Good.
And I will add thank you to the staff for the fact that you have so smoothly over the past year converted all of these to the performance-based contracts. I think that's the combination is very to be commended.
Good. Any further comments from members and/or staff? If not, then having no further business, and I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a great day.